Welcome to our posts. Today we will see stories of r/ProRevenge. Phone calls for the previous owner, who turned out to be my crappy manager. Names have been changed to keep anonymity. Mobile phones became common in my country around 2004, just as I finished high school. My parents bought me my first phone, a second-hand Nokia. It was bulky and basic, but I promised myself that someday I'd buy a new phone with my own money. When college started, I had a 2-hour daily commute. In high school, I had excelled academically and won several district-level awards. These awards were being distributed during my first year of college. One nationalized bank award finally gave me enough money for a new phone. I bought a Sony Ericsson K300i and a premium SIM card, not realizing it had been abandoned by its previous owner. By the third day, I started receiving calls for a guy named Bitsa from various financial institutions. It turned out the number previously belonged to him, and for 20 years, I've been getting these calls. Determined to keep my premium number, I began a routine of blocking wrong numbers. Back then, blocking was device-specific, so each time I got a new phone, I had to start over, keeping a list of numbers to block. I got my first job after graduating in 2009. Around 2010, I was assigned to a new project with a notorious reputation for burning people out due to a nefarious project manager named Bits. I didn't know his full name for quite a while. He took pride in making our lives a living hell. Bits ruled with an iron fist. From the moment his team stepped into the office, they were met with a barrage of emails and messages, each more urgent than the last. Bits thrived on creating chaos, often changing project deadlines on a whim, demanding his team work late into the night and through weekends. Bits' presence loomed over every task. He insisted on micromanaging every detail, yet was quick to take credit for any successes, no matter how small. Failures, however, were met with his notorious tirades, publicly berating his team and assigning blame without hesitation. His unpredictable temper kept everyone on edge, afraid to make the slightest mistake. Meetings were another tool in his arsenal of torment. He scheduled them during lunch breaks and after hours, ensuring no one could escape his grasp. These meetings were often pointless, serving only to reinforce his dominance and disrupt any semblance of work-life balance his team might have had. His relentless stream of emails continued around the clock, each carrying a thinly veiled threat, perfection or dismissal. Under his reign, morale plummeted and burnout soared. Yet Bits remained oblivious, satisfied only by his complete and total control. I was quite ashamed when I learned that he was from the same area as I was and had gone to the same school, though years before me. In 2012, our company merged with a parent company. Almost nothing changed personnel-wise, but infrastructure-wise we got MS Outlook and an organization view. That was when I first learned about Bits from an organizational hierarchy perspective. His full name was an eye-opener, it was Bitsa. Now, the name was common enough, but at the time, mobile numbers had an area-specific pattern, so I already knew that the previous owner of my number was from the same area as me. Still, it could be someone else. I wanted to dig deeper. I talked with an old mentor who lived in the same area and had coached several high school students for the last 2 decades. He confirmed my suspicions. I won't go into the details, but it was evident that Bitsa and Bits were the same person. I had been quite pissed with this unknown person named Bitsa for almost a decade by then, and Bits had been the bane of my, and several others, existence for quite some time. This is where the revenge lies. First, I unblocked all the numbers in my phone. I was getting 5 to 6 calls daily on average, but after unblocking about 150 numbers, it increased to 15 to 18. My answering strategy changed drastically. Instead of saying, "wrong number," I politely explained that the owner had changed his number and provided his current number to update their database. This is where I could be the a-hole. I also volunteered his manager's number, in case he tries something else. The fallout was epic. These people had been trying to find him for almost a decade. Banks had sold his debts to companies that harass people for a living to get their money back. It turned out, he had been taking loans in everyone's names, his wife, parents, uncles, aunts, and giving everyone that same number. He was evading credit card debt and loans of upwards of $200,000, equivalent in USD, but it's a crap load of money where we are from. Apparently he had almost 20 cases filed against him, but no one could find him. probably why he thought he could walk on water. There are multiple versions of what happened at the office when his manager started to get calls about him. He was let go about 2 months later, haven't heard from him since. TLDR, previous owner of my number had duped several financial institutions. He later turned out to be my crappy boss. I informed the banks of his new number and his manager's number, leaving his career in shambles. Next story. Some like it hot. Reading a recent stolen food PR reminded me, I too, have a similar life experience to share. True story. I had taken an R&D internship for a food company over the summer in Keokuk, the armpit of Iowa for those unfamiliar. For housing accommodations, the company had set me up in the local college dorm that was previously a retirement home, so it basically had individual rooms and bathrooms, but one large commercial kitchen. It was summer and the school didn't have a summer program, but allowed 2 fall students to move in at the beginning of the summer. One was rarely there, but the other was constantly in the building and oftentimes had multiple friends over. Given the kitchen setup, we all stored our food there, and it's a pretty no-brainer you shouldn't take from others, but immediately I had various food items going missing or being consumed regularly: sodas, empty boxes of cereal put back on the shelf, etc. I initially posted a sign on the fridge to not eat others' food and also confronted both about having food go missing after the sign was up, but it didn't stop whomever from stealing my food, particularly when I'd head out of town for weekends. After complaining about the situation to my manager during my job, they helped formulate the perfect ProRevenge. Given I was doing R&D work on food products, I was responsible for getting various ingredient samples to use for new recipes. My manager suggested I get some capsaicin extracts for my research, even though we weren't doing anything in that realm for flavor profiles. Well, I found a company that had various Scoville unit extracts and I asked for a variety to see what worked best for our applications. Well, did they deliver with some small 2-ounce bottles of 50K, 100K, and 250K Scoville extracts. I ended up putting the 250K in a travel-sized spray bottle, mixed with some water to help as a carrier, and wearing gloves and a mask, borrowed from work, doctored the common food items being stolen with a liberal spraying of my mixture, mainly cereal, chips, crackers, jug of milk and the lip/top of a few soda cans. For the snacks I actually put some into a separate bag and left them open to dry before mixing back into the original packaging. I did this in a different dorm room in my wing, as I know well enough how potent this can be in enclosed spaces. I did this right before another trip out of town, and when I returned I found some of the chips and cereal and milk was missing, plus 2 of the 3 cans of soda I had doctored. I never got to see the result and no one ever said anything, but none of my food went missing for the remaining month of my stay. I hope the experience was enlightening for them and they still remember the time they played with. Next story. Operation Let It Go. My dad just shared a story about my late Uncle Dale, his lifelong friend and fellow engineer. So in his memory and in spirit of the upcoming holidays, I present for you the tale of nepotism, engineering students and Idina Menzel. Uncle Dale was a senior engineer at a small firm in the Midwestern USA and engineering instructor at the local community college. He was also, unofficially, in charge of the office parties. To help offset the costs, he had a small tin box on a table outside of his office with a slot in it so anyone could donate money to the party fund. Everyone knew about it and were happy to donate. A month or so before the company's big Christmas party, Uncle Dale decided to check the box. Lo and behold, it was empty. Uncle Dale knew something was wrong because he had seen several colleagues putting money in the box. This could only mean one thing: someone was stealing from the party fund. At this moment, Brad, the owner's nephew and a fellow engineer, came around the corner, and something about the way Brad was looking at him made Uncle Dale suspicious. Brad didn't have a good reputation around the office, to say the least. He had a reputation of being pushy, obnoxious, rude, and just plain entitled. Unfortunately, he was not only the owner's beloved nephew but knew how to skirt the rules so he wouldn't get fired. Uncle Dale decided to set a trap to catch the thief. Using his engineering skills, he set up a hidden rig using a hidden doorbell camera right by the box. He then had a colleague loudly brag about how he contributed $100 to the party fund. Then he waited. He got a notification that the camera was recording, and watched Brad open the empty box, scowl in disgust and throw the box against the wall. Now you'd think this would end with Uncle Dale presenting the video evidence to his boss to get Brad fired, but oh no. As I mentioned in a previous post, if there's one thing engineers love, it's solving problems. And if it's engineering students, they'll make it an experience to remember. Uncle Dale then went to his engineering students. He offered them extra credit to come up with a rigged box that would make noise when opened. The more obnoxious the sound, the higher the bonus. 1 week later, they delivered their project and demonstrated how it worked. Pleased with the results, Uncle Dale awarded them the extra credit as promised. The next day, he set up the rigged box and proclaimed, "Well, isn't this nice?" Someone donated $50 to the party fund. Then he went to his office and waited. The engineering students had rigged the box with one of those inserts from cards that play music when you open them. By popular vote, they had picked "Let It Go" from the Disney movie Frozen, right around the time the song was beginning to become unpopular. They also managed to ensure that once opened, the box couldn't close unless you pressed a hidden side button releasing the hinge, so the song would continue to play. For extra funsies, they made sure to angle the insert for maximum volume and secured it down with industrial strength glue. Sure enough, everyone in the office heard Idina Menzel belting the hated song and Brad's frustrated grunts while trying to close the box. One of those attracted by the sound was Brad's uncle. Finally, Brad chucked the box at the wall, managing to put a good-sized dent in it. The uncle then summoned Brad to his office. 15 minutes later, Brad left with a cardboard box and cleared out his desk, along with a note in his file: "Do not rehire. Do not recommend." So his engineering career was over. That Christmas, Uncle Dale had a little video prepared to show at the party. The doorbell camera had caught Brad's attempt to steal from the box, all to the tune of "Let It Go." Next story. Got rude guy arrested for suspended license. This story takes place about 20 years ago. In the mid-2000s, my friends and I would frequent a small billiards place in a neighboring town where you could rent a table by the hour or play per game. We'd play a few games, watch whatever sports were on TV, and have casual conversations. There were no problems and no drama until about 3 months of us visiting this place. A guy shows and takes our spot at the billiards table. No big deal. We were all chatting anyway. 20 minutes later, my friend lets him know we want to play next game and the jerk is super dismissive. Needless to say, we didn't get in during the next game. So I politely let him know we wanted to play next. Another lady chimed in she wanted the game after us. The guy blatantly ignored me and the other woman. Some more time going by and the guy leave the table. We see our chance to get in. We put the quarters in and the balls are dispensed except the green 6 ball. The guy took it to the bathroom with him. At this point it was ridiculous and we notified the manager. The manager noted it was 12:30 and they were going to be calling last call and closing, so he didn't want to make a scene by kicking him out. He gets us another ball so we can play. The guy comes out of the bathroom and knows we realized what he did. He smirks and proceeds to the patio to have a cigarette, bringing along his beer and the green billiard ball. The guy comes back in and tossed the ball he was holding onto the table, hitting a few balls on the table and messing up our game. He goes up to the bar just in time for last call. One of the friends I was with suggested we follow him home and each call the highway patrol to report a suspected drunk driver. 3 of 4 of us agree. So when he leaves, we used our trusty Nextel push-to-talk phones and coordinated several calls to the police. We provided details like license plate, vehicle make and model and color, and mentioned the car nearly hit another vehicle, was swerving between lines and driving erratically. This was under a 15-minute plan. We had no idea where the guy lived but suspected it was close as he was visiting a neighborhood place, so our time was limited. The one guy who didn't notify the police tailed the jerk and called us giddy when a police officer pulled between him and the guy and turned in his lights to pull him over. The police blotter that week included an arrested of a guy who was pulled over after multiple calls of erratic driving. He wasn't arrested for DWI but instead for driving on a suspended license. TLDR, guy was a jerk at a local billiards club, so we got him pulled over by the cops and he was arrested for driving in a suspended license. Next story. Not going to pay overtime? Think again. I was discussing this sub with a good friend, and he said, "Boy, have I got a story that'll fit." It wasn't his story, but his brother's, and I sat with him and got the details. Buckle up, it's a good one, and a long one. Let's call him Bob. Bob has been fiddling with computers since he was a kid, and knows them pretty well. As with most IT people, he's moved from job to job. The employer he worked for was a service/distribution company, and there were 2 IT employees. The company was located in Ontario, Canada. About 3 years ago, Bob's employer decided to modernize their software. They had separate programs for dispatching, for inventory, for payroll and finances, and it was complicated moving information from one program to the other. They decided to get an ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning, program, and Bob recommended one that he knew inside out from a previous employer. For those of you who don't know, an ERP program handles everything: purchase orders, sales, inventory, personnel, vendors, customers, all of it. You can run a report and find out which customer has bought the most part ABC in the last year. Which salesman has improved his numbers the most? Which vendor has the fastest delivery time? Which shipper packed the most orders? Everyone in the company used the ERP program, but it was very complicated, and they used the aspects of it that related to their position. For example, the receiver would accept a shipment, verify the quantity, confirm it was received, and the inventory stats would be available to the salespeople if they wanted to look up how many were on hand. The receiver didn't care what the price was, or who the vendor was, he just did his job. Bob was run ragged during the implementation process, but he managed to train most of the employees on their aspects, and after a few months, everything was running fairly smoothly. Bob still got tickets for tweaks in the operation of the software, and occasional hardware IT issues. Then the company decided to expand their footprint and was marketing into different time zones. That messed things up. Atlantic Canada is 90 minutes early, so if someone sent an email or an order at 8 a.m. their time, it would arrive at 6:30 a.m. Ontario time. Pacific Canada is 3 hours late. So an email sent at 3 p.m. Vancouver time would arrive at 6 p.m. This stretched out the day, so many staff came in early and worked late. Bob would arrive at 8 a.m. and there would be people that demanded his immediate assistance, and were annoyed that he didn't respond instantly, even though their request was submitted before his start time. Same with late in the day, his phone would ring at dinner time with people that wanted help right now. They decided to stagger his and his IT colleagues' shift times. Bob would start at 6 a.m. and work till 2:30, and his colleague would start at 10:30 a.m. and work till 7 p.m. Bob's colleague had kids, and refused the shift change. The employer insisted. The colleague quit. That meant that Bob was the only person in the IT department. The employer said they would look to hire a new IT guy, but they had trouble finding one that knew the ERP system. And they were offering well under a market value salary. Bob asked for a raise and was denied. Then he wanted overtime, and the employer told him that as an IT specialist, he was exempt from overtime laws in Ontario. Bob looked it up, and the employer was correct. This went on for some time, and he knew lots of IT people socially. They told him what the company was offering, and Bob knew that they wouldn't find another tech. Things went downhill from there. Bob would get chewed out if he missed a call or an email, no matter what time it came in. He had to train new hires in the ERP system, as well as take care of the hardware. He asked repeatedly for better compensation and was denied. So he planned to get a new job. Now here's the revenge. Bob had access to the entirety of the ERP program. When a user signed in, the time was logged, and even if they didn't sign out, after 15 minutes it would log them out anyway. Everyone in the company was on salary, and many of them came in early and stayed late. Ontario labor law states that even salaried workers are entitled to overtime after 44 hours a week, unless they were managers or supervisors. So Bob jumped into the program and ran a report for each employee that wasn't a manager. All the way back to when the ERP program was started. Then he reached out to an employment lawyer and got the okay to refer employees to him. Bob lined up another job, and after he left, every employee in the company got an email with an Excel sheet showing the hours they had put in past 44 hours a week. The subject line said, "You're legally entitled to overtime pay." In the body of the email was the lawyer's name. The crap hit the fan. Almost every employee authorized the lawyer to negotiate with the company on their behalf, and the company had to pay a ton of money. All the company had to do was pay Bob for the extra work he put in. Instead, they had to pay almost everyone. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share and subscribe the channel our posts.